guess what? I got a Discord server.
All right, moving on. Next topic.
I can't see them. You need to list them off. But you want to talk about rating anyway, so I know.
I want to talk about rating. I want to talk like I saw because the other day I was, doing my usual thing, working. And so, okay, so I followed this conversation between like 3 or 4 guys on the Discord, and they were talking about rating. And the thing they were talking about was the ratio between open world rates or open world rates or instance stuff. So the ratio is 80-20. So 80% of all the stuff that is group content, like dungeons, raids, is open world. So the argument came up that sounds cool for a second, but if you think about it longer and you look at the current player base for MMORPGs, when it comes to PvE content, the majority of all that stuff is instanced. So I know one of the main pillars of Ashes is PvP. And the conversation went down towards the point where what if, and this is just a what if question, all right? But I figure I bring it up because it actually kind of makes sense if you look at, for example, I don't know, New World, which is mostly PvP, I guess, to some degree. What do you do if people get turned off? The casuals get turned off by not being able to go raiding on a Wednesday night because it's open world and they have to PvP. Because let's be honest here, the majority of people that play MMORPGs are not really PvP focused. At least that's where the conversation went in.
But that's also kind of the direction the genre has gone in.
I
think that's one thing. I think it's a little to act like there isn't another crowd that hasn't really been appealed to. I think that's part of the answer here. The answer to that question, though, is it's going to probably. I mean, there might be. I guess we don't know what
like the
in-game rating is going to look like. Are you going to have a raid you want to complete every week, or from the answer Steven gave me, it sounded like there might not be something like.
No. The point that I wanted to get is yes, there is a crowd for open world PvP and PvP focus, but I don't really recall like a super big MMORPG that is just focused on PvP.
But MMOs also haven't really advanced really quickly.
I know.
So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah.
I still haven't made my point. Let me finish.
Okay, then make your point. Make your point.
Honestly, I freaking love this giraffe. The point that the conversation was made, and the point that I want to get at is, we know the direction Ashes of Creation wants to go, and that's all fine. That's what we're all here for. That's why we love the idea. But what if, or rather, what could Intrepid Studio do in case people get so turned off by not being able to do endgame group content because they always are forced into PvP that they turn their backs and go somewhere else?
This is like one of those really controlled arguments where I don't think we're in a good position to. I mean, they would have to pivot based off what people want to do.
Yeah.
But it's like in game. So in some of the games I've played, that's similar. Raiding isn't just okay. We're gonna go clear the current dungeon raid this night. Raiding is we're getting together. And usually this is more management on the, or more work on the management side, but they kind of figure out what you have to do. There's also the fact that in Ashes, everything is tradable. So just because you can't do the highest in rating doesn't mean you can't do something to help advance your character.
Yeah, I know, but what if, like for example, if you look at New World and how New World failed, and that is just, large-scale PvP, in that sense.
That's disingenuous.
That's not
To
not
just
why.
be like,
That's
In
not
oh,
the
it
why.
failed
the-
because it has this one thing that
New
no.
World has a lot of problems. New World's
Okay,
New World has a lot of problems.
Listen,
And
you're getting way too defensively. Right? I'm just saying. If we run into the situation where you are not able to, get the crowd.
Situation would be you would not be able to advance your character. It's tricky because it also kind of depends on. There's a lot of factors, so it's like yes, they can just go towards WoW, but there's other things they could probably do.
That's where I want to get it with this conversation. Can they, if it runs in a situation where, let's say, people say, I don't want to play this because I cannot raid when I want to raid. I worked 8 hours a day. I want to go raiding. I don't want to deal with a bunch of little kids ganking us.
Part of it is like, well, okay, one, it's not going to be. If you want less action, this is another counter argument to this. If you want less action, there'll be places you can go to get less action. It's like BDO. Yeah, if you want to go to Sawsons and get the best stuff, like best XP per hour, you might encounter people. But, if you want something more chill, you go to Bandits. Sorry, this is a long time ago. This is when I played.
Yeah, no, I know.
If you want less action, but you still want to make gains, you go to, like, Bandits. Somewhere where people are less competitive. So there's that aspect to it where it's like there'll probably areas of the map that are less competitive but still gives you resources that help you advance.
Yeah, but if people just like, I'm talking about PvE raiding right now. I'm not talking about gathering all that stuff. I'm talking about
Well, no, it's the same thing. It's just there'll be open world content for them to do. There'll be a highly competitive area probably around the metros, and then there'll probably be less competitive area.
Okay, so if the consensus is moved towards like, hey, we want more instance rating, then they can design more instance rating down the line.
But do you think they will? That's the thing.
If that's where they see their thing going, then they yes, they will. I think they will because
that's where the conversation went. Because one part of the conversation said yes, they will not because it would break the game because everybody would just go into instances.
There'd always be something around it where either instance rating would be very restricted gear. You don't get the same materials you get for open world, or that would probably be what it would be, where it'd be.
There's a lot of factors that go into your thing is messing.
Yeah, they'd do things to keep the open world relevant.
Well, so there's other things besides rating that keep the open world relevant. The game, like rating, isn't the only thing keeping open world relevant. If people want to do instance rating, they'll design more instance raids. I'm not worried about that. But
no, I am worried.
The MMO community, the MMO community is moving towards a primary rating focus kind of thing.
It's been like that forever.
I think some people have been moving away from that though. It's one of those things where people have like done that for so long.
You have your old. I think the difference is like you have your older school like MMO players that like grew up on rating, and that's what their main focus is in terms of like MMOs and people that wanted that. And then you have your newer generation that are like more PvP focused. And then you have your PvE people that I just hate PvP, or I'm not super competitive at PvP. So they focus more on the PvE side of things. There are different things, but MMO gaming in terms of like everything else related to gaming has been moving more towards like a PvP kind of like a faster paced kind of system though.
I don't know. I've at least seen people trying to make more PvP focused games where, I mean, they've always run into usually financially. But yeah, I guess I've seen that too.
Yeah, but
there's definitely a market for it.
I mean, I wouldn't say there is a market for it. I agree that people would or try to go down that direction. I just haven't seen like a game really succeed.
But you haven't seen a game really succeed since like WoW and now Final Fantasy.
I know,
you don't really have a good sample size for games succeeding.
That's where I say that even though a lot of people are screaming, yeah, we want more PvP and combat and all that stuff, that I just in my head I come to the conclusion that there are people screaming for that, but the majority of people that play MMORPGs still want the old kind of content. Otherwise, you would have.
But how many of
The
those
old
people actually
content is
do
killing
raids?
the genre. Number one, the old number one, how many of those people actually like do raids? Number two, the old content isn't evolving the genre in any way, shape, or form.
I
Actually,
know,
it's
but
killing the genre.
I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying the majority of people still prefer and play that type of content. Because otherwise,
But that's not true.
Why
I'm
isn't-
pretty sure if you looked at the majority of people who actually play MMOs, they don't actually raid, or at least raid at the high level. They might do LFR and WoW. But there's a lot of people who play MMOs that don't necessarily raid.
I mean, how do you let me like finish my argument? I'm saying I have the feeling that more people play or prefer the old type of content, which is raiding, PvE stuff, and instant
But we
stuff.
got that proven wrong in WildStar.
What do you mean?
WildStar was like, we will bring back the old hardcore raiding.
Yeah, and they messed it
What
up.
happened to it? It flopped and it's gone now.
Yeah, because they made it too hard. Let me please finish my argument, for God's sakes. The argument I want to make is I have the feeling that more people prefer the old type of raiding or the instant content compared to the people screaming for PvP content. Because otherwise, all these Eastern PvP based MMORPGs like, I don't know, Elion and what else just came out would have been a bigger success, but they haven't.
Most of those
But
games,
you could just look at so many other PvE games that had the similar success. Like
most of those games are PvE rating focused.
So it's like, I don't know, it's one of those disingenuous arguments where it's like, well, these games failed, and especially when it comes to MMOs, and there's so many factors that can cause an MMO to fail. Like, if you're saying rating is the be-all, end-all, then, like, EQ, like, any of the EverQuest games. And then I think the real crux of this argument is, who cares? The games can be different. Just because this is like the MMO gatekeeper, where it's like, well, this is what most people like, so it has to be this. And it's like, no.
This is the consensual
games can be
PvP,
different.
Argument. The Ashes caters to a very specific crowd, and yes, they're still going to cater towards their core audience of like, hey, you guys, if the PvP, like if the corruption isn't working the way it's supposed to, then we'll try to tweak the corruption. If rating isn't working the way it's supposed to, then we'll tweak rating to be more instant, or we'll lock off the boss, or we'll do something. But like the focus is large scale content, like large community based things, like large
I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying, what if, like, based on the conversation was fun because they were making good points that I was able to follow. Because, for example, they brought up examples like New World, and they brought up examples like, Elion, where they say, yes, this is meant for large scale PvP and all that jazz, but who's still playing?
It's one of
games?
those, like, I don't know. I don't like those arguments because it's like the people use. I think this is a separate place, but people use Guild Wars 2 however they want. It's like Guild Wars 2 is action combat. No, Guild Wars 2 is tab to combat content. It's like people label games however they want to fit their narrative.
Yeah, people like look at New World or Elion and say like, oh, this game failed because of this reason. Those games failed because of a lot of reasons. New World wasn't just like the PvP changes they did, or moving towards like more
to get back to the whole argument or the whole question that I wanted to ask. What if they decide, hey, this is not working, 80-20 split is not working anymore, people are actually getting turned off by this, what could they do? So they'll
just design more content based around
content.
Yeah, they'll just make more instance content.
Okay, but wouldn't that, if they do that, wouldn't that somehow defeat
you
the
would
purpose?
So if you're saying, would it compromise the open world content?
Yes.
No, it doesn't have to. They can just make it, or the way, I guess I think the easiest way to do it is to put stuff in that is separate from the open world. So you would put in,
there's plenty of already.
So you'd put in gear, you would put in less, if not no, resources, and you put in gear that is just doesn't have the same stat flexibility as open world. So you'd want the open world content to still be technically the best, but this gear that you can get from your instant content would be power level wise at the same level, as your crafted gear, or maybe like slightly below it. But then stat-wise, just not as flexible or not as optimized as the crafted gear.
No, it makes sense. All right. Moving on to the next topic.